Evelyn Matalon, 100 years, who was once guide commissioner in St. Thomas, has been giving us a guided tour of what Jamaica was like in the early years of the 20th century, where the silver slipper and the glass bucket were the places to go and enjoy yourself dancing. Foxtrot. One of the most famous characters in those days was Mrs. Bourne, who was in charge of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
Mrs. Bourne, I was just reading about her the other day. She was an English woman that lived out here.
Yes.
And she walked. She walked all over Kingston. And she had a bicycle at one time.
Right.
And then I think something went wrong with the bicycle. She used to walk. She was tall and skinny, and she was quite a character, really.
Yes.
She was quite a character. I remember her when I was a child at school, because we always used to see her walking up Hope Road.
Yeah.
I don't know how she came here, or...
I think she was the wife of the colonial secretary or something like that.
No, I don't think so.
Not because
I don't think so. Jelf was the colonial secretary.
Oh, yes, so, yes.
Mr. Jelf.
Yes.
I was very involved in the Girl Guide.
Mrs. Evelyn was the commissioner for Girl Guides Association.
Oh.
And she commissioned me at the Yala Secondary School then in 1972. So that's a very long time.
I was a commissioner for St. Thomas.
Oh, you were the commissioner?
For years and years and years. I've been in guiding about 40 years, you know. Everything that went on in guiding I knew about.
Yes. So
and I'm still on the executive. I go to the meetings sometimes too. Girl Guides is British.
Yes.
They have the movement in America, but they call it Girl Scouts.
Yes.
But ours is from Britain, from England.
Yes.
It's a voluntary organization, you know,
Yes.
like the Scouts. But it's a very, very good organization, and I think it does a great deal for the young people. It teaches them morality, and it teaches them honesty. I mean, it has every good principle in it. And I think the more we could have scouts and guides, the better our country would be.
Yes.
But you know, there's so many other things today to interest boys and girls. That the Scout movement and the Guide movement are not as popular as they used to be.
No.
Oh, I'm Mrs. Lewis.
Mrs. Lewis?
I'm a retired teacher.
Yeah, what's your full name?
Daphne May Lewis.
When did you first meet Miss Evelyn?
Oh, a long time ago. Probably 35 years ago, more than that probably. I was at school standing outside my classroom, and I saw this box of cookies arriving. I didn't see who was carrying them, I only saw the cookies. So I wandered downstairs to see what were these cookies arriving and who was carrying them, and it was our Miss Evelyn. The buyer was taller than she. She was efficiently selling my canteen cookies.
Oh.
Now, I became a guider, and of course then we met again and again at just about every function that I went to. She would be there.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have a friend.
Oh, yeah.
And we have been friends a very, very long time.
What was the spirit behind the Guide movement?
It was the days before we started not volunteering. No one volunteers now. And you gave your time freely because you were at school and the children needed something and they all wanted their uniforms and they looked good and they could earn their badges. It was a sense of achievement. And somehow, I don't know if times were easier, but teachers did not consider being paid. We just stayed there until the meeting was over and then we went to house. We went home. It was a beautiful time in Jamaica. Well, it was a beautiful time for me.
Yes.
And you see, we had a good commissioner. She organized everything. Evelyn Matalon.
Oh, beg your pardon. All right. What made her a good commissioner?
She will tell you right now.
I had guide and brownie movement in practically every school in St. Thomas. Practically from Bull Bay, Cedar Valley to Dalby. I had guides and brownies in nearly every school in the parish. Cookie time was a very busy time. Prince and I, my driver, we used to go all over the place selling cookies. We actually were the second best parish in the island selling cookies. We sold the most. The most was Manchester, and then we were next. Yeah. We sold thousands of dollars of cookies. Thousands of dollars. That's how the guide movement is financed. The cookie month. Yeah.
And you operated out of
guide headquarters.
Where was the headquarters for the guides?
Waterloo. It's still there. The headquarters is still there. It's just next to Devon House. The Devon House road is here, and then ours is right beside it.
My name is Nathan Budai. Budai. I met Mrs. Matalon through her husband. He was chairman of Surge Island Dairies. Matter of fact, it was a sugar estate, and it changed in 1969. A consortium, I think it was 7 of the larger planters in the area bought into it, and after that in 1974 it went into dairying. So I met the Matalons from back then, and before I even go further, since it's directed to Mrs. Matalon, when I see her, I see humility. This is a lady over the years. I was just discussing it with her earlier. I've never seen her ruffled. Mr. Matalon is a little much rougher, but Mrs. Matalon is always calm and collective. I remember when we had problem at Surge Island, and Mr. Matalon would call me, Budai, what is the hell happening up there? You know that dairying can't take a strike. Go and talk to the manager. I was just explaining to Mrs. Matalon what I had to do. And
what you had to do?
The manager was talking to the union delegate, and he was slapping the ruler on the table, and the ruler break and nearly knocked the gentleman head. And the workers just went off.
Yes.
And he said, go and get him and let him apologize to Mr. Harvey. And I have to go and took him in the car and carry him up and let him apologize to Mr. Harvey. And the next morning, the workers were back milking cows.
You are watching Hill and Gully Ride, brought to you by the Media Technology Institute, training the best.
My passion for filmmaking started off when I was younger, making YouTube videos with my friends. We used to always do these mini movies of us doing stunts and flips. I knew then that I wanted a career in video production. And what better place than MTI to get hands-on experience with media professionals that have been in the industry for years. Kickstart your career today. Call MTI.
You are watching Hill and Gully Ride, brought to you by the Media Technology Institute, training the best.
Hill and Gully Ride is on the veranda of Evelyn Matalon, once commissioner for guides in St. Thomas. She's 100 years old, but sharp as a razor. Mr. Budai, who worked with Evelyn's husband, Zaki Matalon, is telling us a story.
I remember being an assistant accountant. I remember when in the 90s when they used to milk the cows and just throw away the milk because mastitis would set in.
Yeah.
I mean, you just have to milk them. I mean, that was very good for the bottom line. And Serge, I look back on those days and I know that Mr. Matalon must have gotten a lot of support from Mrs. Matalon to keep that place going, because without Mr. Matalon probably would never have a Surge Island dairies today.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring back the dairy industry, but I tell you something, those were turbulent days when the skim milk powder just virtually destroyed the industry. Yes. I worked there for 33 years. I started work in 1963.
Yes.
And I know what went into it to keep that factory. And now it's a dairy complex going.
And this was Mr. Isaac.
Isaac, but yes. We used to call him Zaki.
Yes.
So you remember those days, Miss Evelyn?
Yes, very well indeed. You know, my husband was a Kingston boy.
Yes.
And when we got married, my aunt ran this property. It was a banana property, banana and coconuts. And she ran it. And it was really the only woman that I knew of in Jamaica that was running a property. And she was very successful because the planters down here respected her very much.
Yeah.
And even Mr. Johnson from Producers, she was thought Aunt Ivy was a very special lady.
Producers in United Fruit Company?
No, Producers, Jamaica Producers Association. United Fruit Company was a foreign company, it was American. And they started the producers here, Mr. R.F. Williams and Mr. Charlie Johnson were the two men that started that company, Jamaica Producers Association, which was in rivalry really with United Fruit Company, because United Fruit Company were the only ones here that bought bananas. So they could give you what they liked.
Whatever price.
Yeah. But when we had the other company come in, there was a little rivalry and planters got a little better money. And so
Competition.
Yep.
Yes.
Always good thing, eh?
Yes. Usually, yes.
What about Ainsley Henriquez now?
That's my son. Ainsley's my eldest son.
Yeah.
I was married to his father for, I think, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And we divorced.
Did he give you a lot of trouble when he was growing up?
No, we had him here, and then he went to boarding school, you know. He went to Jamaica College. I had another son, Richard, who lived in England, but he has he has subsequently died in England.
Yeah.
But Ainsley and Richard went to Jamaica College. So I taught them until they went to school, until they went to college. And I taught my other children. I had David and Rosalie and Judy. I taught them. And I taught a couple of the other children around the neighborhood, a couple of the Hopwood boys and the Parkinsons.
What subjects did you teach?
General, it was children, little children. I taught them to read and write until they went to their secondary schools. The boys went to Jamaica College and the girls went to Immaculate Conception. But my husband, Zaki, went right through the Second World War. He was in Beirut studying medicine.
Yeah.
And he joined the army in Palestine on November the 3rd, 1939, and he was demobbed in 1945. So he went right through the war. He went all in the desert, you know, the 8th Army business.
Yeah.
It was all in that, you know. But he was never wounded, he was lucky.
Rommel and Company?
Erwin Rommel, Field Marshal, commander of the German army in the desert, known as the Desert Fox.
Fought against them. I never met him until he came out on leave during the war, 1946, I think.
Yes.
And he came out on leave to see his family because he had 6 brothers and sisters. You know, he was one of 11. My husband was one of 11. So he came to visit, and I met him, and he went back to the army. And then when he came back, we got friendly and we got married.
What is that treasure chest we saw outside on our way here?
That's an old steamer trunk that when we travel by boat to England or anywhere, we used to take our things in that. And that was and they used to have another trunk that stood up that you could hang your clothes. And that was under the house next door. And my grandsons discovered it the other day and took it out to take a look at it.
How do you get along with your grandsons?
Very well. I get along with all my children and all my grandchildren. I have 9 grandchildren and I have 14 great-grandchildren. No, 15 great-grandchildren.
Very good.
I have no granddaughters here.
They're all away.
They're all away. But they come often, you know. I say, Anna, Ainsley's daughter, Anna, I see her all the time. She flits in and out. Yeah. And they always call me, so I'm in touch with them. And now that we have computers and email, I'm right there with them all the time.
Yes. Any special hobbies you had?
I used to do a lot of knitting and crochet, but I'm afraid old age has taken its toll. I'm not doing anything.
Yes.
I used to do a lot of knitting and crochet.
And you were a good tennis player?
I used to play tennis, yes. I used to play tennis 3 times a week. I love tennis.
Yeah.
That's the only sport I did.
Also on the veranda was an old friend of Miss Evelyn, Lucille.
I came here over the next door and worked with Miss Madiki, our auntie. And for about 6 months. And I leave. Miss Madiki sent and called me to work with Mrs. Matalon. And
we've been friends ever since.
Very good.
And I worked with her 23 years.
Yes.
And I leave and went to England. And I spent 12 years.
12 years? Doing
in
what?
England. And I came back. Just Miss Matalon.
Yes.
And when she came to England, she and Mr. Zaki at Knightsbridge. I go there and spend time with them.
Yeah.
And they are very nice to me.
Yes.
And my children. I don't leave them out. I came here sometimes to spend the day and I went out back.
Yes.
And
we know your daughter in Miami, yes.
And I have one daughter in Miami. And Miss Evelyn, when she went to Miami, she go and look for her.
Yeah.
So we are near relatives.
And you keep in touch with each other, yes.
And we keep in touch with each other.
Yes. Miss Evelyn, how did you like England?
No, I never lived anywhere but here.
You never lived
Oh,
here?
you never went to
I never lived anywhere but here.
Mm-hmm.
I visited London. I visited Oxford. You were in Oxford. I visited Oxford. And then I've been in America quite. One of my daughters is in America.
Yes.
In Miami. So I've been there quite a number of times. But I've never lived anywhere but here.
Yes.
And I don't want to live anywhere but here.
You are watching Hill and Gully Ride, brought to you by the Media Technology Institute, training the best. You are watching Hill and Gully Ride, brought to you by the Media Technology Institute, training the best.
Hill and Gully Ride talking with Miss Evelyn Matalon at her home in Stanton in St. Thomas. She's a bright, accomplished storyteller who prefers to live in Jamaica than anywhere else.
I don't like the cold. I'm very happy to be here. My daughter now is in California. Her son is getting married over there. I didn't go because it was too far. But now she tells me, Mother, I'm so glad you didn't come. It's so cold, you would be dying.
Miss Evelyn, did you ever meet the Queen?
Yes, 3 times.
Where? How?
I met her twice in Jamaica, and I met her once in London. Yes. Well, you know, when she came here, My husband was Custos of St. Thomas, so he was automatically invited to the thing at King's House. Just a garden party thing, nothing very special. And one time I had sprained my ankle very badly and I was on crutches. And all my friends said, "Oh, you can't go." I said, "I certainly am going." And I went on my crutches and it was wonderful. Everybody gave me a chair.
So, Miss Evelyn, tell me about your association with Miss Evelyn. When did you meet her first and all that?
I met her during the 80s when I was working at Morant Bay All Age, and I was a brownie guider. They had a manual that we used, and we would teach the children. They would earn badges, so we had to prepare them to do different tasks so that they could earn their badges, and we prepare them, and when they were ready, Mrs. Matalon would come and admit them officially as brownie. Then after I finished at Morant Bay, I went to work at Paul Bogle High, and then I became a guider. The girls used to sell cookies so they can get money for the Girl Guide movement.
Yes.
They would sometimes visit like the hospital to the children's ward to bring cheer to the children at the hospital, or the guider might decide that they want to visit like the infirmary, and then we would take little gifts for the inmates. So Miss Evelyn was always crocheting or knitting. She always had her bag and she sold the things and gave the money to the Girl Guide movement. As a matter of fact, I brought a pair of bedroom slippers that I bought from her. That that she made, and I bought this one from her, and then I in turn used the pattern to make several other pairs that I was able to sell and use the money. Yes, it's made from 6 squares, and then we join them together. This is for wearing in the house. Especially persons who live in cold country, they really like these. I gave them to my relatives and so on who live abroad, and during the winter now they would wear them indoors. But she always had her bag knitting or crocheting. We had good times with her. Annually we used to have a campfire when all the guides and the brownies would meet, and we would have a big campfire, and we would collect some long sticks, put sausages on the end of them, and the girls would roast them in the fire and eat them.
We used to go around the town, and beg. I was a good beggar.
When they had camp, we had the camps, like the camps would be held out of parish, and we would take girls from here and the guiders would go, and then they had the tent experience.
Miss Benjamin, tell me about your association with Miss Evelyn.
I came into guiding round about 1976 when Nita from Denmark, she was working at the Girl Guides Association, and she went around to the schools in the parish to recruit leaders. She ran training in the parish to train the teachers to be Girl Guide leaders and Brownie Pack leaders. In 1983, the Governor General at the time gave a challenge to all the uniform groups in Jamaica to increase their membership by over 5,000. So the Girl Guides Association then took up the challenge. They employed 3 trainers, traveling trainers. I was one of them. I worked in St. Thomas, Portland, and St. Mary. I went to the schools to recruit and train teachers to be Girl Guide leaders and Brownie Pack leaders. And during that time, Mrs. Matalon, she was the divisional commissioner. So she was in charge of St. Thomas, Portland, and St. Mary. And from time to time, we would have gatherings with all three parishes. I remember us going to Port Antonio to have Brownie Rebels. That's a sort of fun day with all the brownies in St. Thomas, Portland, and St. Mary. The girls would have the opportunity to socialize and meet other brownies from other parishes. We would be all over doing camps, selling cookies, as you heard before. February is the anniversary, we call it Thinking Day. That's the birthday of our founder, Robert Baden-Powell. So we would have all the girls in the parish, both brownies and guides, coming together. We would have a church service and then a little social get-together. We have had a group called the Local Association. These are persons who are not in uniform, but they want to be associated with the movement. So we had I think our association, Mrs. Matalon, was the best in Jamaica. And they would do the fundraising. As she said, she was a very good beggar. So she would be all around begging things. And there was a trainer for Cornwall, Middlesex, and I was in Surrey. We would come together to do training. So I had a lot of experience traveling around Jamaica, meeting different people, doing handicraft skills, enjoying the out of doors. There was a program that would help them that we follow, like a syllabus. The first year, they would work on these points, these 8 points, and they would get badges for that particular year, and there were interest badges that they could earn. They would have to prepare refreshment and serve it. They would have to introduce somebody at a function, and they would be and they would be assessed and then given a badge, the jester badge.
What would you say is the present state of the Girl Guides Association?
Well,
as good and buoyant as it used to be?
No, not as buoyant. As Mrs. Matalon said before, there are so many things there now to interest the girls, and it's very time consuming. You have to be committed to it to do it, and most of our leaders are teachers. So after preparing your lesson plan, you would have to prepare some activities based on the program for the girls. It's not as vibrant as it was in the 80s.
The thing about Mrs. Evelyn Matalon is that at the age of 100, she doesn't pull any punches. Whether it's about a failed marriage or the state of the Jamaican society during the earlier years, when we were less of a united people. We'll continue with our journey with Evelyn Matalon of Stanton in St. Thomas on our next program. Until then, we're up the hill. Thank you for watching Hill and Gully Ride.